you for joining us today. Welcome to our workshop on the Your Money, Your Goals Toolkit with the CFPB. My name is Jennifer Quiroz, and I'm the Executive Director of the Financial Empowerment Network. I'm so glad you're all here with us today. For those of you who are not familiar with the Financial Empowerment Network, we are a coalition of organizations dedicated to supporting the financial empowerment and well-being of our communities. We provide training and technical assistance to all of you providers working in those communities. So far in 2022, we have hosted 2 webinar sessions. In January, we co-hosted with the FDIC a workshop on supporting VITA sites across the Northwest. For those of you who are not familiar, VITA stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. And actually next Tuesday, March 15th, is VITA Awareness Day. There are sites across Washington State offering free help to qualifying taxpayers in both in person and virtually to file their tax returns. In just a moment, I'll post a link in the chat for where you can find resources near you, as well as the link to the recording from January. And then last month, Cassie Russell, who's here with us today, joined us as we focused on supporting the financial well-being of justice-involved individuals. She reviewed the CFPB's Your Money, Your Goals companion guide that's focused on reentry. That recording will be posted very soon, in fact, possibly by the end of this week. You can find links to past network webinars on our website, everyoneiswelcome.org. There's lots of great resources on our site, as well as webinars and upcoming events. Some that you might be interested in: last year we had webinars on credit reports and debt, credit rebuilding opportunities, and dealing with consumer and medical debt. And I'll post the link to our events page in the chat in just a moment as well. I also wanted to let folks know that we have another event coming up in March, which is a network gathering of folks who offer financial coaching to clients or community members, whether that is your official title or it's just part of the role that where you work. This meeting has come about because 30 coaches, counselors, and educators responded in December to a survey and indicated great interest in connecting and convening. In fact, there was an overwhelming desire for us to gather on a regular basis to network with one another, share best practices, and learn from each other. So we are pleased to invite you to our first virtual gathering on March 25th at 1 p.m. There is no need to register for the event. It's open to anyone, and I'll post the link for that in the chat as well. Last, because I think many of you are new to the Financial Empowerment Network, I want to make sure you're familiar with our Bank on Washington initiative. So Bank on Washington is aimed at connecting and underbanked folks to safe, affordable, and accessible financial services. Here in Washington State, we have 11 financial institutions that offer Bank on certified accounts, which means that those accounts meet a specific set of standards, such as low opening deposit, low or no monthly fees, and no overdraft charges. So they are designed with consumers in mind, and you can learn more about Bank on Washington on our website, which is bankonwashington.org, and I'll post that in the chat in just a moment as well. And last, if you want to stay up to date on events and announcements from the network, please follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook. I post workshop announcements there, interesting articles, and also announcements from our partners. So if you have an event or program that's coming up and you would like us to promote it, please reach out to me, and I'm happy to post those both in our newsletter and then also on our social media. With that, I want to turn to our purpose here today. So we are here to learn more about the Your Money, Your Goals Toolkit and companion guides, which are produced by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. These guides were developed to be used by anyone working with community members, but especially folks in nonprofit and social services, such as many of you who are here today. There is no prior financial knowledge necessary. The guides are set up to be used by folks who are not financial experts, but rather case managers, advocates, counselors, and such. So thank you for being here today to learn more about how to support the financial well-being of your clients. And my hope is that you will learn some things that will be helpful for yourself and your own financial situation as well. We hope that today will be interactive. So if you're able and comfortable, please feel free to turn on your camera. We want to get to know each other through these workshops as well, and it's helpful to see folks. And with that, I would like to introduce our presenter here today, Cassie Russell. So thank you, Cassie, for being here with us today. Cassie is an ICF contractor providing training and technical assistance on behalf of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This work includes working directly with organizations who are implementing Your Money, Your Goals in their settings. Cassie has extensive experience helping organizations integrate financial empowerment services and has personally partnered with hundreds of individuals on financial capability goals. Cassie has worked with a diverse set of organizations, including Head Start and Early Head Start, community action agencies, multi-service organizations, tribal organizations, faith-based organizations, and colleges and universities. She is passionate about partnering with communities to address and remove barriers. We're so pleased to have her with us today. Thank you, Cassie.
Thanks so much, Jennifer, and thank you all for being here. So as Jennifer mentioned, today we're going to talk about Your Money, Your Goals, which is a financial empowerment toolkit. If you're familiar with it, that's great. If you've never seen it before, that's fine too. We're going to chat about some tools today and really practice how to use them with the folks that you're already working with. So before we go further, I need to share with you that I'm making this presentation as a representative on behalf of the Bureau, and nothing I share today is legal advice or guidance. All the opinions I share are my own and may not represent the views of the Bureau. We're also going to talk about some links like to annualcreditreport.com and some other resources. And it's important to note that there are many products and services that may be of interest to you and the people you serve in the marketplace. So now that we have that out of the way, I wanted to introduce Jill Wheeler, who's going to share some information with us about the CFPB and financial empowerment.
Great. Thank you so much, Cassie. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all. And could you continue on to the next slide? Great. I wanted to just say a hello and send greetings on behalf of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We're so excited to see you all joining today. We really appreciate the ongoing work of the Financial Empowerment Network. Leaders from the network have been important collaborators for many years over the development of this toolkit. We really appreciate your time. I wanted to make sure that you all, many of you may be already familiar with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, but as a reminder, we are a federal agency and our role is to implement and enforce consumer financial laws. We work to make sure that the market is transparent, that consumers can understand the risks, costs, and terms of agreements upfront, and that people can make the best choices that meet their own financial needs. They can comparison shop in the marketplace. And if a company violates laws, we can take action to follow up and enforce those laws. We want to work to empower consumers to make sure they understand their rights and know how they can take actions when rights are violated. Later in this presentation, Cassie will be mentioning our complaints function and your feedback both on the consumer education materials and on any complaints that you or others submit to the Bureau are really important in informing our work, helping us prioritize and respond to the needs of consumers. Could we continue on to the next slide, please? Let's see, and just to mention, I represent the Community Affairs section, which is part of Consumer Education and External Affairs. Our work focuses on serving populations who may lack full affordable access to financial products and services. We focus on low wealth and low income consumers and people who might be otherwise financially underserved. I just wanted to highlight our approach to all our work and then turn back to Cassie as she continues to dive into the details. Like I mentioned, our work builds and was really based on deep rigorous testing of all of these materials with practitioners. So we value your feedback on how these materials are working for you, how they help you work with the people you serve, and we're always open to feedback along the way. We're interested in understanding trends in the consumer experience in the field and how we can support you in reaching those underserved communities and help, undertaking our role of both enforcing the laws and empowering consumers. So I'll turn back to Cassie, and thanks so much to Financial Empowerment Network and to Cassie for leading this presentation today.
Thanks so much, Jill. So as Jennifer mentioned, today is going to be interactive. So we're going to use our cameras at different points in the day. We're going to go into breakout rooms. We want to hear from you in the chat, or you're welcome to unmute yourself. Before we, excuse me, jump into the bread and butter, I just want to talk about the suite of materials. So one of the ways the community affairs section supports the work of practitioners is by making materials available. So the CFPB's resources are available for free to organizations. And there's also training and information for frontline staff and volunteers like all of you. And ultimately, we want that information to end up with consumers, as Jill said, so that people are financially empowered to select products and services that work for them in the marketplace. So today we're going to talk about the toolkit. And as Jill mentioned, this was rigorously tested with people in the field. And as Jennifer mentioned earlier, it's really designed for anybody to be able to use it. So I saw some of you are specifically focused on financial goals with folks, and that's great. But if you're a case manager, or if you're working with immigrants and refugees or young parents, whatever population that you work with, money comes up, right? Whether somebody's trying to get an ID or a driver's license, get housed, go to school, buy a home, all of these things involve money. So the toolkit is not a curriculum. We certainly have organizations who use it in group settings, but it's really meant to be responsive to a specific financial conversation. So when somebody comes in and they're working to get their GED and they need to set aside money to pay a registration fee, you can work with them using a tool to make a financial plan to set aside that money. We also have 4 companion guides, and those are really designed to meet the unique needs of specific populations. So there's one called Focus on Native Communities, one for the military community, one for folks with disabilities. And then last week we had a training on Focus on Reentry. So if you didn't join us for that, go ahead and access that recording. In addition, we have 4 booklets, and those are spiral bound. We do have versions without a spiral. So if you're working in an institution that does not allow for wire binding, you can reach out and I can help you order the right kind. But these are 8 pre-selected tools designed to respond to a specific financial situation. So savings, debt, credit, and when somebody is behind on bills, they're having a hard time getting through the month. I just wanted to highlight 2 of the booklets. So the first is debt getting in your way, sorry. So there's 8 tools here and they're color coded. So somebody can easily find tools sort of based on how they're feeling about their debt situation. The next is want credit to work for you. So same thing here. And this just helps give you an idea of what this booklet assists with. So one really exciting thing is that in addition to downloading materials from the Bureau's website, you can also order printed copies for free. So shipping is free, the materials are free. Please, if you'll use them, feel free to order. So these are great to hand to clients or have in a waiting room, especially for folks who are still working in person. So it does take about 4 to 6 weeks to get your materials. If you need them faster, you can feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat later, or the Your Money, Your Goals inbox. But we really encourage you to order if you'll use the materials. And again, We do have autofill, auto calculate tools that are available online, and that's what we're going to use today. But if you like to hand things out, or if that works for the population you're working with, please do feel free to order those materials. So before we jump into some of the tools and practice using them with each other, we want to talk a little bit about integration and financial well-being. And I saw earlier in the chat, somebody said that they like this work because they like to help people feel like all things are possible. And I think that's so important as we go into this conversation. So we look at financial empowerment as being different than financial education or financial literacy, or maybe some other terms that you've heard. We know that somebody needs both knowledge, but also the skills and confidence to use that knowledge to be financially empowered. As service providers, you have a unique role because you're already working with people and have developed that trust, and you might have access to products and services and therefore provide opportunities for financial empowerment. We hope that you will select a tool or two or three that resonate with you today and practice using them, and then integrate them into the services that you're already offering. So if you already ask people about income and assets at your intake, maybe you'll adapt some of our language or use our tools. And then ultimately, we hope that you'll capture outputs and outcomes and help partner with folks as they reach their financial goals. So why do we do this? Well, financial well-being is about a person's ability to meet their obligations, feel secure in their financial future, and make choices that allow for the enjoyment of life. So we want to focus both on present, but also on future. And I love this freedom to make choices to enjoy life. So one of the things that we always highlight is that this is different for everybody. And we're going to do some activities on values and really dig into why clients and us, right, all have different financial goals. So maybe to me, freedom of choice feels like being able to go out to eat, whereas for somebody else, it feels like only being behind on one utility bill, right? That feels like they have some wiggle room to make some choices. So whatever it is, we really want somebody to be empowered to make the choices that are best for them. So we're going to jump into some tools. The first one is called My Money Picture. So as I mentioned, the toolkit has a lot of tools. There are 9 different modules, and this is in the first section of the toolkit. And this can help you find a place to start a money conversation, so you don't have to memorize the toolkit. So here we see 10 questions. So for example, if we look at number 2, are you behind on rent, car payments, or other bills? So if somebody says yes, you may want to start with module 4 on paying bills. If we look at question 6, are you having trouble paying student loans or other debts? If they say yes, they may want to look at module 6 on dealing with debt, or module 4 on paying bills. So this, again, you don't have to be an expert. We're going to look at how the tools are laid out, but you even don't need to remember where all the materials are located. You can always come back to this. There's also a version of this tool for you as practitioners, and it's called the Financial Empowerment Self-Assessment. You can also use this version, but I think of the Financial Empowerment Self-Assessment of being on a plane when they tell you to put your oxygen mask on before you help somebody else. And it really helps you get an idea of what you might want to explore more before you help others. So we're going to dive into some breakout rooms, but first I want to demo a tool with all of you. So this is the Setting Smart Goals tool, and we start with money values. And we start with values that are important to a person because it's really tied to our choices and our priorities. So if I really value stability, Maybe I'm comfortable with a long-term lease agreement with a landlord because I want to be in an apartment for 5 years. Or on the flip side, maybe I really value freedom and I want a short-term housing option so I can see if it works for me, or maybe I'm planning on moving or exploring different things. So I'm curious if somebody can tell me what's a goal that clients have when they come talk to you. And it doesn't have to be financial. So tell me in the chat, what's a goal that clients have when they're working with you? What's a goal that some clients have? Okay, great. So I see stability, security, save up first and last month's rent. Yep. And that's a really hard one, right? First, last, and security deposit is a lot of money, especially to come up with quickly. To buy a home, to be able to provide for their family, not worrying, paying off debt. Yes, finding a place to live, build an emergency fund, saving anything. Great. Okay, so I'm going to share the tool, and I also put the link in the chat, but thank you. Start a business. Great. So you see people really have a variety of short, medium, and long-term goals. So that's great. And that makes sense. So I want to do an example, and this is what the fillable tool looks like. So maybe somebody said stability, and their friends and family are really important to them. So then we ask them, what are some things you'd like to change and dreams you have for themselves and their family, right? So this is where multiple goals could change. So maybe I want to come into play. So maybe I want to change my housing, and my dreams for the future are to start a business. So we want to start with SMART goals. So we want to make sure that they're specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So somebody said save up for a deposit, right? So maybe I will save, let's say $3,000 by June 1st for a deposit. So this helps somebody really drill down on their goal. So is it specific? Yes, I'm going to save $3,000. Is it measurable? Yes, right? Money is a unit of measurement. Is it achievable? I don't know, June 1st is really soon for that amount of money, right? That's a lot of money. So maybe that flags for me, oh, I need to access some community resources to make that work. Or maybe I say, oh, that's not realistic. Let's push this to September. And I'm going to talk with my case manager about getting a shelter extension or making something work until then. Is it relevant? Yes, housing was my primary goal. And is it time bound? Absolutely. We're going to do this by September 1st. So that's just an example of how to use the tool. And now we want you to practice. So it's okay if you're already setting goals with clients using a different tool. You don't have to adopt this. This is really about exploring what tools will and won't work for the work that you're already doing. The thing about the toolkit is there are a lot of options. So if you use this tool and thought, it's not really going to resonate with my audience, you can adjust it. So all of these things, there's no plagiarism. They're for you to use and adapt. But B, there's also value in saying, we already do this in another context. Maybe the workflow of your agency looks a little different and people have already been in a homeownership program by the time they get to you. Or maybe people aren't in a place where they can really focus on SMART goals because they're coming to you in crisis, right? So it's not going to work for everybody, but there's also value in deciding that maybe a tool isn't the best fit for your workflow. And you can also add to this. So when I use this tool facilitating sessions, we do this, and then we do dream boards, with magazines, and it gives people an opportunity to be creative and really visual, and it's accessible to folks sort of regardless of where they're at, make things a little bit more fun. All right, any other thoughts on that tool? Okay, so I'm actually going to switch to sharing the website. And I want to point out, this is where I was sharing before. But this is the, sorry, second. Okay, so this is the CFPB website. And then to find resources for practitioners, you'll go to consumer education and then just click on this link here. So you'll see that in addition to your money or goals, there's some other tools that you might want to use, whether it's information for youth, folks who are managing somebody else's money, maybe a family member that they care for, or an older adult in another capacity. But we're going to go to manage or your money or goals, sorry. And here we see the toolkit, and you can download the entire toolkit in English, Spanish, or Chinese, or you can order printed copies like we talked about earlier. But today we're going to use the individual tools. So the tools autofill and auto calculate, and the setting smart goals tool, that wasn't super important, but for people who have access to a computer or a tablet, even a phone, it can be really helpful if math is a barrier or causes some anxiety and maybe an already difficult conversation. So we did setting SMART goals, and I just want to mention that there's a follow-on tool called putting goals into action. So here we see that same gray page. So again, you cannot be familiar with this tool and let a client or participant know, okay, I think these are the steps that we're going to do. They can also use the tools on their own, so it can be helpful to get people started. So here, if the SMART goal, like we said, was to save for housing, then this breaks down the steps. So maybe step one is I'm going to research bank accounts. And then resources I need. So I really like this because it helps somebody think through things that might be challenging for them. So maybe I need a list of bank on accounts. So I know I'm in check systems and that might be a barrier, and I want to have information about safe, affordable banking products. Maybe I need to meet with my case manager. And to do that, I need a bus ticket, right? So I'm going to connect with them about getting that bus voucher or asking somebody for a ride. And then there's dates to complete the steps. And then who will I check in with? So if somebody has support, whether it's through you or somebody else, they can add that information in. So it really kind of breaks down those sub goals. I find this tool is really helpful for bigger goals, right? Like people will say getting a job. Well, it sounds like one sentence, but we know that there's so many sub steps, right? First, I need to go to the workforce center to get help with my resume. I need to find the phone numbers of my old bosses. Maybe I need to get a food handler's license or driver's license or whatever it is. So it can really help somebody break down the steps that they need to reach their goal. We also know that life events come up. So this tool helps somebody brainstorm things that they might need money for. So we have some common life events and large purchases. So buying a car, birth or adoption, marriage, tools for work, a birthday or a rite of passage, buying a house, and college or training. But I'm curious if you can tell me in the chat what other life events come up with the folks that you work with. What other life events come up? Domestic violence, retirement, a health crisis, divorce, death in the family, holidays, loss of income, Absolutely. Those are all things that come up. So these obviously they went sort of in a positive direction, but let's say somebody is planning on a separation or to become a single parent household. So there's some costs to that, right? Establishing a new apartment. So how much will they save and how much will they need on credit? Some other things that we see are equipment for new jobs, tires, snow tires, things related to climate or weather, depending on where somebody is. So medical issues, yeah, absolutely. Having a savings account for that or setting aside money for a procedure. So I'm going to switch back to our slides now, and we are going to talk about income and benefits. Okay, so tell me in the chat, what's an example of regular income? An hourly wage, yep. Yeah, if you have steady hours. I worked retail for a long time and sometimes you don't have steady hours. So that kind of income could be regular or irregular. TANF or Social Security, yeah. So those are benefits that are also a regular source of income. And then we have irregular income. So that could be child support that's not paid regularly, jobs with extremely variable hours, seasonal, maybe somebody does something agricultural or they work at a Christmas tree farm in the winter or do pumpkins in October or berries in the summer, whatever it is. Maybe somebody's a lifeguard at a pool, right? There are all sorts of things that are seasonal. And then we have one-time occurrences. So that could be a tax refund, or maybe somebody starts receiving SSI or SSDI and they get a back payment. So how are benefits different than income? How are benefits different than income? Anyone have ideas? How is a benefit different than income? Eligibility, yep. Requirements have to be met. Maybe somebody has to check in or look for work. But also some benefits might restrict what you can use the money for. So if somebody is receiving SNAP or WIC, we want to be sure when we're budgeting that we're allocating that money to eligible purchases and then looking at other sources of income for other expenses. Same thing with housing vouchers or things like that. So benefits for many people are their most regular source of income, and that's really great. We just want to make sure that we include them in the budget. Sometimes people don't include benefits in their budget, so reminding them to include that information. So our first tool in this section, again at the top, we see 4 steps to get started. So somebody is going to gather their pay information and track it week by week. And then we're going to total it up by week and also for the month. And the reason we're going to look at weeks is because later we're going to look at expenses by week as well, right? So if my paycheck comes in the week 2 or my SSDI, but my rent is due in week 1, then we're going to need to do some budgeting or some advocacy to maybe get that due date changed. There's also information here on net income. So really making sure that people are budgeting after taxes and deductions are taken out of whatever pay that they're receiving. So here's an example. So we have somebody who has a job that is paid biweekly, and then each week they also earn $200. So maybe they work in the gig economy, they're delivering groceries or giving people rides, and they stop when they hit that $200 mark because of asset limits and income limits, and they don't want to lose their $400 in SNAP, right? So this person has a larger family. This is an example we use where it's a single father who has 3 children. So he is eligible for SNAP. So we see the totals per week. So week 1 is light on income, right? And so that's something that we need to plan for when we look at the timing of expenses. Then we have a spending tracker. So just like we tracked income, we also want to track spending. So what are some ways that people you work with or you yourself track spending? What are some ways that people... Okay, so somebody uses an app. Great. What else do people use to track money? A PDF, yep, Excel sheets. Write it down on a piece of paper. You can keep receipts. If somebody has a smartphone, they can take a picture of their purchases if they don't want to carry around the receipts. Maybe while somebody's tracking, they use just a specific debit or credit card so they can see all of their expenses in one place. Maybe somebody uses a check register. I know it's very old school, but there's a lot of ways that people can track their expenses. So it's about them picking what will work best for them. And then we want them to, again, look at it by week and then the category totals. So looking at here, we have cell phone, debt payment, eating out, education, pets, transportation, other. I always really like to highlight the other section. So I tell somebody, look, I really don't care what you're doing with your money. If there's something you don't want to tell me, that's fine, but let's budget for it. So put it in that other section. So maybe we haven't built enough rapport. This is really personal for people to share, right? If somebody just logged into your online banking and saw everything you spent money on. And that's a good time to have a conversation around those money values. Like, look, it's okay. You know, we all make different financial choices. So tell me, why do you think cell phone is first? Why is cell phone listed first? It's a form of communication. Yep. Connection to resources. Yeah, those are both great points, but the right answer, which somebody else got, is that it's alphabetical. So the reason why we share things in an alphabetical way is because we want people to decide for themselves what their priority is. So sometimes we get into conversations around needs and wants. So one thing we ask people is a cell phone with a data plan a need or a want? A cell phone with a data plan, is that a need or a want? Tell me in the chat. Do you think it's a need or a want? Okay, so somebody says it's a want. Somebody says depends. Somebody says it's a need. Yes. So I have a 13-year-old loved one. I've explained that it's a want for them and that they can earn money and pay for it if they'd like. But maybe if I am doing that ride sharing, I need it for work. I used to have to clock in and out on a cell phone. So I had to have a data plan to use that app, right? Maybe I have a medical condition that I, monitor my blood sugar with an app or whatever it is. So it's just really important that we ask people about needs and wants for them. We also know a lot of people have been using cell phones to access virtual learning during the pandemic, or maybe it's a safety thing for people. So just keeping in mind that people should sort of prioritize, and it's okay to have a conversation saying, look, let's look at what categories, and asking, what do you think you could cut back on? Maybe the answer is something different than we would make ourselves, but just empowering people to make that decision for themselves. So another popular tool is our bill calendar. And so again, these you are auto fillable, so you can add the month and type in here. You can also print it out. And this just really helps somebody think about when bills are due. So since we have that timing of income and expenses, adding regular bills on here, like a cell phone payment, like auto insurance, a monthly bus pass, court fines and fees, child support, whatever it is, so that people can really visualize this. It's also a great way for people who are in a safe situation and want to get their whole family involved. We've had people put this on the fridge and involve kids and like, look, this is what it costs to keep a household running. So this is a tool that can be really helpful. It's pretty low barrier. A lot of people like it. It can be something that you put in a welcome packet, maybe have people fill it out as things change, as maybe they move to transitional housing to permanent housing, or they start school, or they're preparing for a loss of seasonal income. It can be helpful to get this all in one place. So now we want to talk about module 6, which is on debt. So one thing that we always start with is that debt is different than credit. So debt is money that you owe. If I have a loan for my friend, family, for my car, for my house, for a student loan, credit card debt, that is money that I owe. But you can have access to credit without having debt, right? So credit is the ability to borrow money. I have a credit limit on an emergency credit card. If I don't have anything on there, I have no debt. If I have $10,000 on there, then I have some debt in addition to having access to credit. So we just like to highlight that for folks, that credit and debt are different. So we want to talk a little bit about secured and unsecured debt. So I wanted to use cameras for this one. So if everyone can turn their camera off. So Jennifer and Philip, if you can turn yours off, great. And so we're going to vote with our cameras. So I want you to think about secured debt, which means that there is some sort of asset securing the debt, and unsecured debt. So if you think that a home loan is a secured debt, turn on your camera. Is a home loan a secured debt? Turn on your camera. Okay, great. So most of you got it. So for a house, it's secured. If you don't pay that bank note, the bank's going to come and they're going to sell your house. So cameras off again. Now I want to know, is a credit card debt, you owe Visa, is it secured or unsecured? Is credit card debt secured or unsecured? If it's secured, turn your camera on. Okay, great. So for most situations, you all are right. There is one exception, which is if somebody has a secured credit card where they've leveraged a checking or a savings account, in which case it would be secured. What about medical debt? Is medical debt secured or unsecured? So if medical debt is unsecured, turn your camera on. If medical debt is unsecured, turn your camera on. Yeah, absolutely. So medical debt is unsecured. There's nothing that they can repossess. So now I want to talk about this idea of good debt and bad debt. And this is something that people that you're working with or you yourself might be thinking through. So we're going to do the same activity. So if you can all turn your cameras off. Okay. Is a student loan a good debt or a bad debt? If a student loan is a good debt, turn your camera on. Okay. Okay. So somebody tell me what's good about student loan debt, or what could potentially be good about student loan debt?
You can command a higher income when you're done.
Yeah, so it might provide opportunities for a profession that somebody's interested in, or to earn more income. Other good things potentially is that regular payment history can help somebody build credit, right? So for a lot of people, that might be how they build credit. If somebody has federal student loans, there are a variety of payment options to choose from. What could be bad about student loan debt?
If you didn't finish or you got a degree that doesn't really help you.
Yeah, or maybe you got a degree in something that just doesn't pay very much, right? So I think about, I'm an Oregonian, and you have to have a master's to teach there. So if you're a kindergarten teacher and you had to get a $50,000 master's, but you're making $32,000 a year, that math might not really work out. Maybe you didn't finish. Maybe you went to a school that was predatory or closed down. Maybe you didn't understand how the interest accrued. I know I didn't for myself. It's different than a lot of other types of loans, and it accrues really quickly. So those are ways that student loans might be bad. Okay, so camera's off again. Now, what about a payday loan? If a payday loan is bad, turn on your camera. If you think a payday loan is bad debt, turn on your camera. Okay, so what is bad about a payday loan? What is bad about a payday loan? Interest rates, expensive. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it's just really expensive. Oftentimes people get into a cycle where every 14 days, then maybe they need to take out a new payday loan to cover the old one. It may cause an overdraft if they cash the check. I know now they don't require a paper check at most places, but you could end up with an overdraft. But I'm curious if anybody could tell me something that is good about a payday loan. What could be good about a payday loan?
I've had a client tell me that that was the only place they could get money. So
yeah, absolutely. It's accessible, right? So bank hours, 9 to 5. Maybe if you're lucky on Saturday, open till 2. Well, if it's 9 p.m. and I'm in a domestic violence situation and I don't have a credit card and I need to get cash to go to a motel, that makes it seem like a really good choice in that moment. I've also heard people say, you know what, they're nice to me, right? They treat me with respect. I went to X bank name and they were really rude and they wouldn't help me. And then I went to the payday lender and they know my name and they treated me with respect. So we do this activity just to think through, like, there really is no right or wrong. And so in our roles, we're not giving financial advice, which is part of why you don't have to be an expert. You're presenting the information and somebody can make that choice for themselves, right? So for student loans, we're going to sit down and say, okay, here's the interest rate right now. Here's what repayment over 10 or 20 years would look like. With a payday loan, we'll sit down and say, here's the interest rate and here's what repayment will look like over 14 days. And what are other options for both of them, right? So we do this just to kind of push some thinking and think about some pros and cons. So for our next tool, it's our debt log. And this can be really helpful in a variety of situations. And for a lot of people, maybe they don't know their interest rate or if they're up to date. So this helps somebody think through the different debts that they owe, as well as their due date. So you could actually do this before the bill calendar so that somebody could add their debts in there. So it just really helps somebody think about how much is going to debt, what different debts they might need to prioritize, and to do some strategizing around interest rate. After they do this, they can use our tool on debt repayment strategies to decide what's best for them. We also have a tool for when debt collectors call. So we know that this can be stressful for folks. And this has information on what to say and then a place to take notes. And then there's also information so that somebody can follow up. So here we see a filled out example. So they got the collector's information. So it's ABC collector at 123 Sunshine Lane. The original creditor was a medical clinic, the account number, and then what's the amount owed. So this really walks somebody through how to be empowered in that otherwise scary situation and to make sure that the debt collector can verify the debt. So now we're going to talk about module 7, which is on credit. So as we said earlier, credit is the ability to borrow money and repay it later. And you can have access to credit without having debt. So typically how this works is a person uses credit and that creates their credit history. And then different credit reporting companies compile this information into credit reports. And then people use that and put it into a, supposedly secret formula to calculate credit scores. So oftentimes people focus on their credit scores, but that information again comes from the credit report. So we have more tools focused on credit reports. So why do scores and reports matter? No credit history or lower credit scores or poor credit history can make it difficult to do a variety of things. Getting a security clearance, getting a job, depending on the state you live in, screening criteria for apartments. You might be charged more for insurance coverage. So even things like car insurance. You might need to come up with a utility deposit when you're setting up your water. You might have to pay more for a cell phone or internet. And then it can make it more challenging to get a credit card and also to improve your credit score, ironically, because you might not have opportunities to build that positive history. So there's information. We're not going to have time to go through everything in detail today, but there's information in here on what's in a credit report. And people can get their credit reports for free from annualcreditreport.com. So there are 3 nationwide credit reporting companies, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And a consumer, whether it's you or a client that you're working with, is entitled to 1 free report each year from each of those credit reporting companies. Right now, people can get free weekly reports as a result of the COVID pandemic through the end of 2022. So it's easier than ever for somebody to frequently pull down their credit reports and monitor what's going on. There are also some special situations. So if somebody receives public assistance, if they're the victim of identity theft, if there's a natural disaster like Hurricane Sandy, then they're also entitled to additional reports. But just to highlight again, the place to get those for free is annualcreditreport.com. So make sure you get that address right. There's no need for somebody to pay for a copy of their credit report. So credit scores are 3-digit numbers, and they are based on the information in the credit report. Generally, a higher score means that somebody will end up paying less in loan costs or interest rates. A person might have many credit scores, and that's because there's different information on the credit reports and because companies calculate them differently. So we have this tool for people who want to look at their credit reports, and it helps them strategize whether they want to request on 3 separate dates or on a single date. Again, right now, this tool isn't the most useful because you can get free reports much more frequently, but in the future, when we return to sort of a regular system at the end of 2022, that's information that you can share with clients or access yourself. And then there's just some information, preparing people that there's going to be some security questions, and that's to verify that you're accessing your own file. So they'll ask you about past addresses or jobs, or, do you have a car loan? Those kinds of things. People who move frequently or who live in group settings may need to request by mail. So that's fine, and also a normal part of the process, but keep that in mind. Sometimes people get nervous when they need to do a mail request, but it's really common in my experience. In a shelter, most people had to request by mail because that address was tied to too many people. And so, in an effort to keep people safe, they sort of flag that address. So once somebody has their credit report, you can help them review it using this tool. So each section, it goes through information that they want to make sure is correct. And I really like this tool because it's one way that somebody can work on their financial goals without any money. So things like correcting names, removing old accounts, making sure collection accounts are theirs can really help somebody improve their credit history, and it doesn't cost anything. So this really walks somebody through what to look for. So we see here, maybe their name is spelt wrong, an address listed is not mine. The rest of the information is correct. And then if somebody does have information that they need to have corrected, we have a handout on how to dispute errors that they can use to inform the credit reporting company. They can also reach out directly to the furnisher of the information, which is the person that gave that information to the credit reporting company. And then we're going to skip credit scores, but just wanted to highlight that we have a tool on getting and keeping a good credit history. So that's a really big question that we see, how do I build credit? And so this really walks somebody through some different habits, and they can check off the things that they think will work for them. And then there's tips to improving their credit. So again, this is all information you can use. So if you email or text clients, feel free to copy and paste and say, hey, credit tip of the week or the month, however often you're communicating, to share this information with folks. Okay, so just looking at time, we're going to go ahead and skip this section, but Module 8 is on financial service providers. So if somebody is looking for bank accounts or credit unions or has questions about prepaid cards, you can find tools in this section to help somebody find and compare financial products and services. And then there's information in there about check systems and barriers to opening an account. And this tool on opening and checking your savings account helps somebody identify what ID is needed before they go to the bank, as well as any opening deposit, so that they're ready to go and save some time. As Jill mentioned earlier, a big part of the Bureau's mission is making sure that people's money is protected. So this section has information on spotting red flags, whether it's about scams or identity theft, protecting identity, and then unfortunately, if something does happen, how to respond to identity theft. So this is a tool when somebody's these are tools that you can use when somebody is in a hard situation. But I want to highlight that the Bureau takes complaints. So you can submit a complaint online, or you can call. The number accepts complaints in 180 languages. So language access hopefully should not be a barrier for folks. But people who want to submit online can just click submit a complaint. The Bureau really encourages people to reach out to the company first, because they'll know more about your account or specific concern. But then after that, if a product or service is not working how it should, you can submit a complaint with the Bureau. So things like incorrect information on a credit report that wasn't removed, you could submit a complaint about that, or interest rates. Personal background checks. So if you work with folks that may have been justice involved, that's something to flag. So this helps you get a response from the company. So it typically there's a response within 14 days, even if it's just to ask for more time. And then someone will be given information so they can track their complaint online. You can help clients prepare by making sure that they have basic information when they sit down to do this, like their account number and what happened, any documentation that they might want to submit with their complaint. So there's a 5-step process. And then after somebody's complaint is resolved, the complaint is published in a database only with the person's consent and with all of their information removed. And then one thing is that after somebody gets a response to their complaint, they have 60 days to provide feedback about the company's response. So if something's going wrong for people, the Bureau can help them get a response. There's also a tell your story tool. So maybe somebody is having a good experience, or they just have general feedback about the financial marketplace, but they don't need to make a complaint, then they can use this tool. Thank you for your time today. I put my email in the chat. You're welcome to reach out whenever. Even in a year, if you come back to this and you start to work on things and you have questions about any of the tools or implementation, please feel free to reach out so that we can get you the information that you need. And then I also put the Your Money, Your Goals email. That's a general mailbox. So if you have a problem with an order or something like that, you're welcome to reach out. But really, please feel free to reach out to me personally, and I'll make sure that whatever you need gets taken care of. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all for being here today. And thank you, Cassie, for all of this information, for joining us and for being such a great resource for our community. Thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Take care, everyone.